I'm Mantra Roy, the Collection Strategy Librarian at the SJSU King Library, and I'm a member of the BIPOC Become Librarians team. Before we get started with today's event, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Muwekma-Ohlone tribe. The San Jose State University community recognizes the importance of this land to the indigenous Muwekma-Ohlone people of this region, and consistent with our principles of community and diversity, strives to be good stewards on behalf of the Muwekma-Ohlone tribe whose land we occupy. It is an absolute honor to see all of you gathered here to celebrate a journey of 2 years. Our students, our mentors, our advisory board members, library leadership, our colleagues from the 3 partnering institutions, and our keynote speaker, we have come together to reflect on how some of our BIPOC students have learned about the LIS profession, starting with the focus group discussions in the fall of 2022, through weekly meetings with their mentors into this last academic year. For opening remarks, we will start with Mike Nath, Dean of SJSU King Library, who will be followed by Anthony Chow, Director of SJSU School of Information, and he's on Zoom. And then finally, Carla Alvarez, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff for the San Jose Public Library System and a previous co-PI on this project, will speak for the San Jose Public Library. So, Mike.
Thanks, Mantra. First of all, welcome and thank you. It is so incredible to see so many of you here with this program that it felt like it just started, at least for me. It wasn't so long ago that I looked at some paperwork and I had some signatures to make. And this program got started with this incredible team and with this incredible grant from IMLS. And for many of you, I'm sure it felt a lot longer. There was a lot more work, a lot more effort. But to see you all here is just outstanding. So now that we're reaching the conclusion of this cohort, I just want to highlight a couple of things, which is one, this project really taps into an important need of the librarian profession and the larger information profession, which is the need to really diversify the profession to make sure that all parts and all groups of society, of the society that we live in, are represented in this profession. And to that end, having this BIPOC Become Librarians program, which I love actually that the subtitle of this presentation is called The Journey, because it is a journey, right? To kind of make the changes, to put the energy and the emphasis where it needs to be, so that, again, the profession can start looking more like our society and reflect the diversity and the strength and richness of our society. So the idea of working with undergraduates and introducing you to the librarian profession, to me, was just absolutely ingenious. Because so many folks come into this profession because maybe their parent was a librarian or they have somebody in their family. But what we often then do by having those role models in our lives, we're also excluding those who don't have those role models in their life, where there is not that history in the family of becoming an academic or coming from a library background. And so to me, across the board, introducing the profession is fantastic. And I really hope that through the mentors, and thank you to all the mentors and to the mentees who participated, that you were inspired to learn about librarianship, about archival profession, about the information profession as a whole. And what that does is maybe it will lead some of you to actually enroll in perhaps even the SJSU School, the information school, where we do preparation for the information profession. And I should add this to Mantra's introduction of myself, which is that I'm also currently the interim dean of the College of Professional Global Education, in addition to being the library dean. And what that means is the School of Information, or iSchool, as we say, is also part of that. So if anybody's interested in that next stage of your career, you can talk to myself or Michelle Villagrán, who is right up here in the front, and we'd be all too happy to talk to you about curriculum, admissions, all that kind of fun stuff. And if you don't choose to come into this profession, quite frankly, that's okay too, because I know that the experience of being here has transformed you. And the experience of being in this program and having gone through it has transformed you. And so what you know now about what our profession does will carry forward. And maybe if you decide that this is not your career path, it will still have enriched you. And maybe you can encourage others to join a future iteration of this project, or maybe to consider what we offer. So just very quickly on the stats side, I heard that we had 20 mentees who started and 18 who finished. So I just want to say congratulations to all of you. And I really am so excited and elated that you've made it. I want to thank the 7 mentors from across the US, which was also incredible to have this group come together. I want to thank the advisory board members who are also from all across the US. The collaborators in this project, which is another great thing that we did, which I love how we brought together the academic library, the public library, and the iSchool, the preparation, so that we had all of you together. Again, IMLS for funding this project. And I want to also thank Ray Pun, who is joining us today to give the keynote. Ray is the incoming ALA president. And with that, he, nice, yeah, that's with that, Ray will have a very significant platform, and I have no doubt that bringing programs like this one, projects like this one, and the important work in diversifying the profession is going to be something of the platform, because quite frankly, libraries, we've been working on it for a long time, and we have a long way yet to go. So all this energy eventually will lead to results, and I'm excited for that future. So with that, again, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to stand up here and to speak with you. I am so grateful for everyone who has put their energy, their creativity, their time into making all of this happen. And I'm so excited to hear more and maybe get to meet you at the lunch or somewhere in the next couple of hours, and maybe even afterwards. Feel free to reach out anytime to just talk about what opportunities exist and what you could be doing in the profession. So thank you to all of you. And with that, I believe it is my turn to hand it over to Anthony, who is online. Excellent.
Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay? Hey, Mike, how are you?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. First of all, I want to apologize for not being able to be there in person. A few things have come up. I just wasn't able to make the trip down to San Jose. I'm Anthony Chow, the Director of the School Information. I'm finishing my third year. As the first BIPOC Director of the SJSU iSchool, equity, diversity, and inclusion is certainly one of my top priorities. And that includes both how I carry myself personally and professionally, and also to ensure it remains at the forefront of our important work in the LS profession. I want to congratulate all of you, the entire BIPOC Becoming Librarians team, for your hard work and your focus on diversifying our field and society. We know that 2 of the primary ways to do this are through internships supported by experienced mentors in the field, which I know you all experience firsthand. As you move forward in your careers, remain resolute in creating space for diverse ways of knowing, thinking, and thriving, and paying close attention to those who may need even more support. Ensure to give yourself grace, and as my daughter likes to tell me all the time, you do you, Dad. And what she means, and the important lesson here, is to be more of who you are meant to be and not what other people expect of you. Remain in touch, as you may need one other's support, as work in this area often means you're could be isolated and by yourself, and articulating ideas that are not familiar to the majority of people that you work with, and so likely take time for them to take root and blossom. And finally, work very hard, be kind to yourself and other people at all times, and success is almost guaranteed. Thank you. And who am I supposed to hand the mic over to?
I am here, Carla Alvarez.
All right.
Buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carla Alvarez. I use she, pronouns, and I am a proud Latina, daughter of immigrant parents, and it was a pleasure to be part of this project. Originally as a co-project implementer, part of the BBL team, and now here speaking on behalf of the San Jose Public Library as Deputy Chief of Staff. Unfortunately, our civil librarian was unable to join us today, but I know she was so excited about being able to be part of this team collective project. So today we're here because we know representation matters. And having librarians who represent our Black, Indigenous, and people of color is essential for any library system to thrive. In my time working at San Jose Public Library, I have seen the connections that our BIPOC librarians and library workers have had among the communities that they serve. They build trust with community members, relating to them by using cultural references, and when possible, even sharing in language. They're essential in helping curating meaningful collections, resources, and programs and services to support people's individual and collective learning growth journeys.
We're working on the BIPOC Become Librarians project. We have determined that in order to make our profession as libraries more accessible to BIPOC students, we have to create meaningful career pathways by providing mentorship and internship opportunities within our library system, which is exactly what we did. Thanks to this project, the San Jose Public Library became a learning site, among others, and successfully recruited 2 BBL participants, Sherry and Gracia, I see over there, by providing them with an internship opportunity this spring to support our holistic library initiative, which meant attend outreach events and support individuals experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. The experience provides these students with the opportunity to work alongside our staff to learn, create, and develop a deeper understanding of the type of impact they can have on the communities they serve. We were also able to invite a 3rd BBL student, Tiana, to shadow our librarians at the King Library, which provided her the unique opportunity to experience a day in the life of a librarian working in the nation's largest joint public academic library. I would like to take a moment to thank the BBL team, Mantra Roy, Ann Muji, Carly Lowe, Michelle Villagran, Jane Dodge, Carrie Quang, as well as our SJPL staff, Vidya Kalambi, Candace Tran, and San Jose Public Library's racial equity team for their collaborative work these past 2 years. And I see our SJPL team way in the back, so if you can just say hello, thank you. The BBLT project demonstrates that together we can develop pathways to increase the representation of the next generation of librarians. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Michelle Villagran, co-PI on BIPOC Become Librarians, and also an assistant professor in the School of Information here at San Jose State University. I have the great privilege and honor to introduce our keynote for today. World famous, well-known. If you don't know him yet, you're going to know him today. Our dear, I would say, friend, colleague, peer. I don't even know the words to describe Ray, and I don't even recall when we first met, but I do remember taking selfies at Special Libraries Association conference, and I do remember working with him on the Reforma International Relations Committee. So our time goes way back. So I was really excited to see that he would be the keynote today, and I'm sure has some fabulous words of wisdom to share with you. So his bio is pretty long. I actually have more to say than what his bio says, but I'm going to pull out snippets. And he can tell you more later, because I'm sure you can find him online on social media as well. So Raymond Pun, pronouns he, him, his, is the academic and research librarian at the Alder Graduate School of Education. I can't see. There we go. In this role, he supports all library services from research to scholarly communication. With over 17 years of experience, Ray has worked as a librarian in many institutions, such as Stanford, up the street, Fresno East, New York East, University of Shanghai, and the New York Public Library. He's published a lot. You should go check him out. Go look in the library databases, find the literature he's published, and also you've probably seen him present, and if you haven't, you probably will in the future. He's a very active member of the American Library Association. He's also most recently served as the 50th president of CALA, which is the Chinese American Library Association, and the 42nd president of the Asian Pacific American Librarians Association, APALA. He holds a doctorate in educational leadership from Cal State Fresno, a Master's of Library and Information Science from CUNY Queens College, and a Master of Arts in East Asian Studies, and a Bachelor of Arts in History from St. John's University. And even more recently, hot off the presses, like a month ago or so, Ray has been elected and will be the incoming president-elect for the American Library Association. So without further ado, come on down, Ray.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you to Dr. Michelle Villagran for the introduction. And I would really want to give a shout out to Mantra and so many folks, the mentors, and all of you. Congratulations for making through this program and hopefully making deep connections. And so what I wanted to do was share a couple of presentations. I was wondering if I can do that. Can I do that here? Great. So thank you so much, Nick, for your help. And so what I wanted to preface this talk is looking at this topic, every library worker becomes a mentor. So this is something I've been thinking about that is what a great opportunity to speak to all of you that is not about artificial intelligence, which I've been asked to talk quite a bit these days. And so in the I thought maybe we'd start off with some of the norms that might be helpful in framing our conversation today, which is that we want to look at some of these that you might want to take back either for today or in the future when you have conversations that might be challenging or in essence, one that makes you think differently about certain topics that you might not have realized. So I want to just call out some of these norms for today. We want to stay engaged. We want to experience and probably anticipate some level of discomfort. We want to speak your truth, expect and accept a lack of closure. So there might be more questions and answers. Practice growth mindset, make space for multiple perspectives, and most importantly, create joy wherever we go, especially during this time when there's a lot going on, and we want to continue framing that because without joy, it's really kind of difficult to do some of the work we're doing. And if there's anything else people feel like we should put into this, feel free to share it, and I'll just give folks maybe like a few seconds to think. All right, looks like maybe there isn't any, so we'll just keep that in mind. So I wanted to also ask you all here, from a 1 to 9, how you're feeling today, and based on this rubber ducky, if you want to just talk amongst yourselves and just share where you are today, or if you're watching on Zoom, feel free to share 1 to 9. So I'll give everyone like a minute or so to share. Is anyone feeling like a 5? Okay, a couple of people. What about a 7? Which is kind of, okay, the people in the back. Anybody feeling like a 1? Anybody? Oh, yes, we have somebody who feels like a 1. Yeah, and a couple of folks. Yeah. Exactly. So this is just FYI, a meme that was circulated. This is a real rubber ducky that has been floating around. You may have heard in the news. It's not artificial intelligence generated, right? It's actually something that captures the different moments and what we might be experiencing hour to hour or day to day. And I think it's important to sit with those feelings and just recognize and being more present. So what I wanted to highlight is a few things. We're going to just talk briefly about introduction and the idea of mentorship, which is the theme of this presentation. Questions you want to ask yourselves. So I know that such an opportunity to think about the profession, but then you want to ask yourselves these questions before moving into the profession. So these are questions I wish I had asked myself, wish I had known over the 17 years, as Dr. Villagran shared, working in different places that could really challenge you and wish you had known. And then we'll just have some questions and discussions if folks have thoughts to some of these questions. So I wanted to just give a little more context to who I am. So as shared earlier, I'm from New York and born and raised in Queens. And what's been really remarkable is that the profession of librarianship was not something I thought I would get into. It was actually quite an interesting experience, having been a history major. Anyone majored in humanities or social science? Okay, so several of you. Okay, so you're probably thinking, yeah, with a history degree, what else can you do besides go to law school or like get a doctorate in history, right? It's sort of like very limiting at the time. But I saw an opportunity at St. John's University where I did not need to take 2 classes if I wanted to intern, like do an internship. So it's like 6 credits for an internship. And I don't have to do 2 seminars where I'd have to write 20 pages. I'm like, I think I'm going to do that. So I actually had a friend who worked at the New York Public Library as a student worker. He's like, hey, maybe you want to be like looking at this connection. And I was particularly interested at the time on the history of the human rights, history of Holocaust, specifically thinking about the Holocaust oral history records and archives. And what does it mean to preserve that for the future? Because I took this really interesting seminar and it got me thinking. So then this person introduced me to the Dorot Jewish Division at the New York Public Library, where I interned. It was unpaid at the time, but I got 6 credits out of it. And it was quite a life-changing experience because then I ended up being where I am today, talking to all of you because of that work. And some of the text might be a little small here, but I just wanted to say that I've worked in different types of libraries and I wanted to just walk you through some of the journey so that you have some idea about my background and that hopefully it helps you reflect the journey you're going to take ahead. I've also worked in the United States, different parts, New York, California, and in China, which I'll mention briefly. And here's a brief recap. So at the New York Public Library, as I mentioned, this is the iconic 42nd Street, Fifth Avenue. This is where I started as a college intern, which is not even a graduate student intern, right? Started there working with a whole bunch of researchers and learning how to serve users and researchers. And I didn't know so much about it, but the librarians there taught me a lot how to engage in public service work, how to think about collection development, shelving, and things like that. And I wasn't interested. I was still thinking about, I'm going to get into like human rights law. I'm going to go into like law school. And this was just like an experience I'll just have and I'll move on. But actually it turned out to be something that shaped my thinking. And I learned that it wasn't just Holocaust or history records that I really just wanted to focus on. It was about Ladino culture, Ashkenazi culture, just so many different experiences that's beyond the framing which I had, which was just Holocaust, right? And there has to be a myriad of experiences. And then from there, I finished my college degree, and then I ended up getting a full-time position as a library assistant processing periodicals. So you're probably thinking, oh, that's kind of like a lot and maybe periodically boring and dry, but actually it was quite interesting. I got to work with zines, self-published magazines, alternative press, underground works, and started making sure that they're available for people to access. And at the same time, working at this library, I was able to connect with a lot of people in different parts of the work, because it's not just at the reference desk or story time. It's actually a myriad of different experiences that the work of librarians and library workers in general do. And so at the same time, I decided I'm going to enroll and get my MLS degree, which was at Queens College. So working full-time and going to school full-time is really, really challenging. But the great thing is, at institutions as big as the New York Public Library, they do provide tuition benefits. So you want to take advantage of that, right? And if you could get more education while sacrificing some of the social time that you, if you will, you can really advance in your career. And at the time, this was about 2008, I was particularly interested in what was going on in the United States, which was a recession. So there was something happening, and I also managed to squeeze in an internship opportunity where I was interning at the Museum of American Finance, which was at Wall Street. What was going on was that Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, these companies that no longer exist at the time, was collapsing. I was really curious. I wanted to know what are derivatives, subprime mortgages, what created all these issues. And there was an opening. I was interning there like once a week or so. And I learned a lot about setting up museum library archives, because this was a sort of a new museum that was sort of getting a lot of attention because of the recession. And I ended up going with one of the curators, I remember, to, I think, Lehman Brothers when it was going bankrupt. And we went in to talk to some of the people to get some of the collections. And I was just following along. Like, I didn't know what this all meant. But it tells you a lot, because those documents are being researched even today to look at what exactly happened, who were making those deals, and who was suffering from these decisions from these giant Wall Street companies. Of course, it's all up to the researchers to interpret, but I ended up learning a lot just like from that experience that I carry with me today. So I encourage all of you to continue thinking about that there are all types of libraries. That's not just academic or public or school. There are libraries in Disney Corporation, Netflix hires librarians, museums, all kinds of different opportunities that if you can think about where ideally the type of work you're interested in doing and the type of institution and their values, it might actually be something worthwhile to explore in the career. So at the same time, I'm working at the New York Public Library full-time and then becoming a librarian. I get my master's degree and there are no jobs, right? I'm sort of in this library assistant position, and I was told I need to become a librarian somewhere. So luckily, I was able to get promoted in the department and do more work in programming. Oh, okay. So what happened was I ended up engaging more. This is the iconic reading room at the New York Public Library, where I was providing reference services for like 3 or 4 years. But at the same time, I thought this wasn't enough. I needed to do more outreach, which was thinking about how I wanted to uplift marginalized voices that was never seen in sort of like in this kind of iconic space, right? Or in this building. So I ended up partnering with different groups, especially one I remember thinking about in April, which is Arab American Heritage Month. We collaborated with Middle Eastern Americans Center, the study at the Graduate Center, as well as the Amin Rihani Institute to celebrate the book of Khalid, who was written written by Amin Rihani, notably the first Arab-American author. So that was like a really interesting way to celebrate the 100th anniversary. And there's like photos there. And then we got the ambassador of Syria to come to greet and to share stories about the Book of Khaled, which tells the story of two Syrian refugees who left during the turn of the 19th century to come to New York for better opportunities. And at the time, New York had a little Syria component down in the Lower East Side, but it's gentrified now. And so the story is completely like erased, right? And so I wanted to work with different partners and elevate that story. And that was one way of doing that through this work at the New York Public Library, which we had a signed copy from the Book of Khaled by Amin Rihani in 1911. And then the picture you see here with two authors, Lauren Chun and Ben Howe, they were invited based on a presentation I saw at the Queens Public Library. Well, Lauren is a cookbook author making kimchi. And so she is a local author who had a new cookbook out. And I thought, wow, why don't we just bring someone here to talk about the importance of kimchi and like sort of how important it is in Korean heritage and culture, and thinking about Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which happens to be in May this month. So we did that about 10 years ago, and we brought in a cooking demonstration. And so that really sparked a lot of curiosity, but also a lot of confusion. Like, because if you've had kimchi, you know, it's fermented, right? So it has a specific scent. And so it made everybody like, wow, you actually brought this into the library. And I remember somewhere back there, there was some leftover kimchi. I don't know how it happened, but I ended up giving it away like a bucket, like just like right here, right? Like to a friend or something. And then they were just thinking how ironic it is to be in this like iconic space and then, you know, handling such a culturally important food, right? And that time I learned a lot. I gained a lot of opportunities, but if you work in major areas like Los Angeles, New York, or Seattle, or the Bay Area, you're bound to get connected with other people. And so that's what ended up happening for me working in China. So New York University with New York Public Library, they're very well connected in terms of sharing resources and so forth. And then they recruited me to say, hey, we're building libraries in Shanghai, which has a population of 25 million people compared to New York, which was 8 million. Would you be interested? And I said, well, I don't really know. You know, I have family there, but it seems like a really different experience. But I said, sure, why not? Right? Let's have some opportunities, make some changes. So I worked in the New York University in Shanghai, building 2 libraries there. And I think what's the takeaway for all of you is that libraries are not just in North America, there are libraries around the world. If you ended up deciding to work in the Smithsonian Library in Panama, or Texas Tech, which has a library in Costa Rica, or some of the libraries in China, there are opportunities there. So you're not limited to geographically this space, right? And I know that people might be thinking it has to be local, which it depends on your constraints and circumstances. But if you have the opportunity to work elsewhere, abroad, it's a really great feeling and experience. So the one thing that happened was that I ended up having another opportunity to come back to Fresno State. Okay. So managed to get recruited to come back. I was sort of done after 2 years working and building up 2 libraries. And then had a chance to work at Cal State, which is in the Central Valley. And what I learned was that I didn't have anybody like in the connections in Cal State or in Fresno, but I wanted to do something where it was meaningful. And I took an opportunity where I was able to engage with many different groups, particularly students who are underrepresented, first generation, first in a family to go to college, maybe who have migrant background or maybe who are undocumented, and try to make the connections with the services that the library can provide. So the Henry Mann Library, as it was known then, we did a lot of collaborations. So here's some of the ones you see down here with the flyers. Celebrating Women's History Editathon, which is understanding and recognizing that in Wikipedia, there's underrepresentation in the entries, in the participation, and how do we uplift that? So we do this by participating and collaborating with departments like Women and Gender Studies, as well as our Cross-Cultural and Gender Center, as well as any other groups, student groups that was interested in highlighting that. We also became a recipient of a Talk Story grant from the American Indian Library Association to bring oral storytellers talking about their experiences being part of the mono indigenous groups. And this picture here with a group of folks, we organized symposiums with different library workers and poets and educators to celebrate different experiences, particularly Asian American librarians. So I found it quite really collaborative in that work. And at the same time, I felt like it was a transition for me to take on another role, which was where I am right now at the Alder Graduate School of Education, where I teach teachers. So I'm essentially a teacher educator. I work closely with 450 graduate students who are becoming teachers, and they are partnered in different schools. So they might be in LA Unified or Alameda County of Education. And my role as a solo librarian is I get to do everything, which is really great, but also like not so great because you have to do like everything. But what's great is that I get to learn more and apply my doctorate in education, my LIS degree, and really get to teach and shape the future of the classroom, which is really in parallel to librarianship. And so aside from all of this work, all of this background that you heard, I'm also, as Dr. Villagran shared, very active in publishing. So these are just several books that came out for the past 10 years. It seems like it's a lot, right? And different variety of topics from ethnic studies to first year experience to working abroad, sort of bridging international librarianship to Wikipedia and so forth. But I have to say, because of all this scholarship, my favorite part of the writing process is cleaning the apartment. So I have a really clean apartment. So if anything, when you learn about getting into the field, all of that didn't happen. All of that was actually because of the collaborations I had. I don't really like to edit a book by myself. I always like to work with so many different voices and bring people in and find a way to uplift that. So think about that. This is probably your experience as students. You might end up having a really clean room, a house, but just think of it as part of the writing process, as it is for me. But in addition to the scholarship, it's also the connections that I have with different groups that Dr. Villagran shared earlier. So these are some of the groups here that I am part of, which looks like it's a lot. And I just wanted to see, raise your hand if you've heard these groups or if you're part of these groups. Okay, so some of you, but then there will be more, right? I think for sure, being part of these groups, it's not just expanding your network. It's not just necessarily finding a mentor, but rather learning how to be an advocate, learning how to support others and uplift others who may have different types of barriers through the inequity of the field, through inequity in society. So I am fortunate, and they do have mentoring programs if you're interested in specific groups, whether they're racial or ethnic groups or within the larger scheme of things of functional areas like Society of American Archivists and ALA and so forth. But so that's sort of like the general overview of like my background, so you have a better understanding of who I am. And we're going to move on into mentoring. So you have an image here of an adult cat showing a kitten how to like open the shelf for snacks or something. And what I wanted to share is 5 laws of library science from S.R. Raghunathan that many of you may have heard of or maybe not. If you pursue your degree in librarianship, you're going to hear this professor's name a lot, which he defines as these sort of 5 laws of library science, which is that books are for use, books are for all, every book has a reader, save the time of the readers, a library is always changing, right? So these are the framing that you can read more if you're interested, if you search the 5 laws of library science. But I also wanted to add one thing, which is that every library worker becomes a mentor. So all of us here, whether we're a mentee or a protege, we are a mentor in a sense. We have a lot to offer, and we might not even see it that way. Sometimes I still don't see it that way because I have imposter syndrome. But what happens is that it's helpful to start thinking about what we have to offer. So let's talk about cultural and heritage assets. So all of us bring in different identity-based beliefs, values, and meanings. We also have different lifestyles. We experience different things. We have lived experiences that no one else will have because it's shaped to our core identities, whether that's intersectional or specific identity groups. And so what we think about cultural assets, we're thinking about how it makes up our community's identities, but also who we are. And guess what? They're actually assets and benefits to the field, to the profession, to any organization you go through. It's hard to see it this way, but years ago, being bilingual was not considered an asset. it's sort of like historically, the history of education in the United States, right? Assimilating and reducing everyone to speaking English and ignoring and neglecting other languages and cultural experiences. But now we're seeing, yeah, it's really important. And it speaks to how we connect with other people. It speaks to ways to address code switching, right? Which is sometimes we might need to do for survivalism or for ways to develop authentic experiences. And it's not just the language component, but what we do. So at the Alder Graduate School of Education, we had a retreat a couple of weeks ago, and we were discussing what were our cultural assets that were a benefit to the organization. So it's a really hard question, right? And so the question is, what are your cultural and heritage assets? Because we started thinking, well, someone shared that they really like to cook and like cook for others and serve others. And so it gets into the lens of providing for others, nourishing others, right? And so that's something rooted in their culture and community. And that was an advantage that really helps solidify the work that they do for the organization. And this requires a really deep thinking and deep dive that I hope you'll appreciate, and not necessarily devalue some other part of your identity, because that helps you think about what you're going to contribute to the future in any organization. Now, this ties with mentoring. So this came from Chad Burt, which is just a general image that mentoring seems to be very viewed as transactional in these different ways, right? It's like one-to-one or peer-to-peer, and it's sort of like a dialogue in a sense. There are different types of mentoring, but I think there's also other areas to consider when we're thinking about mentoring. And it's not just, okay, I provide you with advice and then you tell me what your issues are, right? And it's sort of cyclical. It's much rooted in also cultural areas to think about. So let's talk about this article for a second here. What's it going to take? Unpacking the Promise of Inclusion by Healy and Gaha. And you'll see here came from the book, Academic Library Mentoring, one of the volumes. This is a really interesting chapter that both librarians share about the cultural aspects of being a mentor and their degree of their identities. But one quote really stood out and I wanted to highlight, which is, it says here, the success of informal mentoring and intentional communities can help BIPOC receive validation from their in-group, prevent librarians on the margins from experiencing burnout, and contribute to the retention of professionals who are othered within LIS. So what they're saying here is helping us think that mentoring is not necessarily something super formal that you need to be part of, right? That you need to create, but rather something that needs to be informally part of the process, that our communities can support each other. And it's not necessarily just, like I said, receiving advice, being retained, addressing burnout, but it's that whole retention aspect. Right. And so all of you here, you're going to be mentors to each other. You're going to be part of this community that's going to take you beyond years and years of the hardship and endurance that you're going to go through, which will be really, really gratifying, because you're going to look back, you're like, oh yeah, we were here in this library and that's how we connected in person and so forth. And then going forward, you build that with other people, knowing that there's going to be a lot of these experiences that will be negative, and that mentorship, that community will help you get through these experiences. Now, aside from that, there's something that a lot of people don't really talk as much that I wanted to mention, which is that there is something called the racial or ethnic monolith myth, which is that we might assume because they're maybe part of our similar identity that we could trust them, that we could maybe rely or like some sort of relationship with them. That's actually quite dangerous in a sense of like, we have to be really careful and not assume everyone is the same just because we look alike. I'm Asian American, doesn't mean I'm going to think all Asian American librarians are going to be my mentors. They might have different experiences and identities, and frankly, maybe different outlook in the field. So racial and ethnic monolith myths are really the intentional or unintentional grouping of people with similar backgrounds, assuming that they have similar behaviors or traits, or you're treating a marginalized group as a monolith, right? Which doesn't talk about the distinctions of each of their experiences, which they have endured in different ways. So I wanted to say that each experience is important to understand in order to be a better advocate and allies for one another, and that everyone can hold racial or ethnic monolith myths and stereotypes, right? So it's something to keep in mind if you're seeking for like future mentoring or leadership support. that it requires that trust that needs to be earned and built over time. And sometimes there are people who identify similar as you, might not be that mentor, right? Because of different experiences. And sometimes there might be someone who's completely different, might be someone who has a lot more value-driven experiences that relate to your thoughts. So let's talk about some of the questions here. So what questions would I have wanted to ask myself, or things I wish I had known before I started? Okay, so this is about 17 years, talking to so many people over that course of time, and just asking myself these types of questions that I would have wanted to know. So questions to ask yourself, there's 6. So we're gonna go for the first 2. The first one is, how much of your identity can you keep? When selecting a place of an employment or an internship or where you want to go next, it's important to check out its culture and values and seriously assess whether it is a place whether you can at least be or feel authentic, right? And a lot of organizations do not want that full authenticity for a variety of reasons, because like I mentioned, sometimes they might see your cultural assets as not as a benefit, right? So it needs to be that reframing. So you have to really think about the organization's core values, their mission statement, and how people interact with each other, and how much you can bring yourself to the space that may or may not be welcomed. The next question here, do you know how the organization perceives you? So when I say organization, I mean your workplace, your internship place maybe, or your school. If you fail to take stock of how an organization perceives you, many assumptions and decisions will be made about and for you. Ultimately, you will need to decide whether or not to address these perceptions or assumptions, depending on their short-term or long-term impact on your career and life. So this part is really tricky, but you really want to understand it's not necessarily what people are saying about you, but how are they perceiving you as a worker, as a colleague, as a person? Because if it's not great, if there's some sort of stereotype that's happening, you want to address that, right, straight out, because that has lingering effects into your career, into who you are as a person. Now, I'm going to pause before moving on to other questions to share a resource. So there's a podcast series called Live Voices. Has anyone heard of it before? Okay, a few of you. So Live Voices, really great. You can search it. It's by Jamia Williams and Jamila Gabriel, 2 academic library workers who interview a whole bunch of leaders in the field. And there's one that came out recently by Denise Solis, who is the digital collections librarian at University of Denver. And she is specific about her intention with collaborating with people. And she says here in the podcast, the more experienced librarians are very nervous not having the answers, because we assume by default, right, that they're experts and they should know. But it's not about having the right answers, but rather it's about us working together, right, to figure out the answers together, to develop the solutions together. So the collaborations impact our ability to move forward. Now, I say this because a lot of organizations might want to focus in on individual work, individual success, and not really thinking about teamwork or collaboration, which actually in the library field, we're very collaborative. We share not just information or interlibrary loan books, but knowledge, assets, abilities to support one another during difficult times. So I think her point is well taken, and I hope all of you here who do take on that path of becoming a librarian, thinking about collaboration as a core value in the work you do. Some more questions you want to ask yourself. Do you have your professional and private priorities in order? Though your priorities may change over time, you need to take a step back and take stock of what you really want to do and conduct an honest assessment of the opportunities put before you. In this examination, you will have to take risk. Otherwise, you will not stretch or grow. In making these assessments, however, it is important to conduct sufficient due diligence. So doing a lot of research, to reach out to mentors, maybe having strategic mentoring, a personal board of advisors, so groups of people here in this space, right? And to really discern where you want to grow and how do you address some of these priorities that are happening. You're in this space right now, you all took a risk to apply, you got in, and now you have a mentor. And that's great, but there's plenty more in that journey that you'll definitely need, because having one mentor is not going to be enough, right? You're going to need a community of people. And this is why this program is such a great way to cultivate that. The question you get next is, do you know your strengths and weaknesses? So this seems like a traditional like interview question, right? What are your strengths and why are you applying for this job, or what are your weaknesses? But actually, you really need to have a deep assessment of this, because if you don't know your strengths or weaknesses, then you haven't been asking the right questions. We all filter, right? And so many of us think we're listening, but what we're really doing is rearranging our prejudice or conceptions of what others think of us, right? And so when you know your strengths or weaknesses, you are allowed to play up your strengths and to take advantage of the opportunities to improve upon your weakness. So many times people are like, well, if you have specific weaknesses that you've identified, you want to address that. Certainly you want to do, but you can't do that alone, because you still won't know whether you've addressed the weakness. You need to have that collaboration, that community support, where then you can grow and learn from it. I want to share another resource before we move on to the last questions here. So this is Women of Color and Lib. So WOC and Lib, which is a nonprofit organization that produces a lot of really great writing and research and so forth. Has anyone heard of this before? Okay, a couple of you. Okay. So feel free to take a look. So a few years ago, I had a chance to interview two amazing mentors in my life that I would not be here today without their incredible support. The first is Miriam Tullio, who is Penguin Random House Library Marketing Manager, but a former colleague at the New York Public Library. And she was a LIS instructor, Library and Information Science professor. And we've collaborated for over 10 years. And I asked her this question, which is, you've been such an amazing mentor to so many people. What motivates you to do that? And she writes in this article that I wanted to highlight, I have benefited from having some amazing mentors, community-minded advisors, mission-driven role models, and trusted confidants. In many ways, the library served as a classroom for me to personally and professionally grow, and I continue to draw on my mentors' collective knowledge and their joy. And I feel a deep responsibility to share with others what I can. So she is paying it forward. And now she's done it for me, and I'm doing it for others. So that kind of model, if you think about it, is what makes it really successful in retaining and building those connections. On the other profile, Sandra Rios Balderrama is a past president of Reforma, which is the National Association of Library and Information Services to support Latinos and Spanish speaking. And Sandra has been such instrumental force in the library field for so long. And now I asked her the same question. How does she see herself as a mentor? What motivates her? So she says she doesn't take it lightly. I never intended to be a mentor in any formal sense of the word. But what drives me to listen and uplift is I've been there. The most difficult challenge is to work inside any library organization and institution. There, we find new norms for formal strategies, methods, trends of flattening hierarchy and patriarchal systems, and static ways of thinking and doing. Today, librarian scholars are looking at white supremacy as a parasite in many of our oppressive library structures. The language and research have deepened. I applaud it. And the interview really gets into the depth of how she gets into mentorship, how she cultivates community, both of them. So I hope you have a chance to look at this. I'll share the slide deck later. You can read and draw inspiration. Now I'm coming into the last questions, and the talk is slowly winding down. I wanted to share these last two questions, which is something you always want to think about. Do you know your management and communication styles? Do you enjoy or have passion about what you do? So question 5, which is thinking about communication and management style. It's not talking about formal management. We're going to manage teams and departments, but rather thinking about how you manage all types of work you have, your experiences, your emotions, right? And thinking about that, right? And so what's important to think about is you have to have more than one communication and management styles. We now have 4 to 5 generations in the library workplace. 4 to 5. We got people who maybe identify baby boomers to Gen X, to millennials, to Gen Zs, and so forth, right? And the student workers, if you think about that, I think still Gen Z, but still, in some places, they still have the silent generation before the baby boomers. Now, I don't like to use these labels, but it helps you think about that communication because they're going to use different technologies to communicate, or they have different ways of engaging and interacting. So it's important to think about that in the workplace and developing different styles, which allows you to understand the whole mosaic. And not just the space that you occupy, not just like what you do in this department, but rather the whole system in the organization. The last question here, do you enjoy or have passion about what you do? You should answer that with some days, right? Some days it's going to be great and some days are like, right? And so each person, you have to find and cultivate the joy in the work you do sometimes. And it's okay to not feel like you're enjoying this work because quite frankly, we can't always be in a dopamine high, right? With the work we're doing. So each person has to find something to believe in and should strive to do something that keeps them in the light. So some of these last words and thoughts here I wanted to share, which is that take stock, critically examine your situation, your strengths, your weaknesses, and at the end, you want to take credit too. I learned this a lot when I decided to run and serve for ALA president. And one of the things someone told me is, if you're not sharing, then it didn't happen, right? Or if you're not sharing what you're doing to get credit, it's important because all of us here, we tend to be shy. Maybe we're first generation, maybe our parents told us don't like share, don't brag. You might humble brag, but don't really brag, like that kind of thing. And then I had to really learn to overcome that. If you don't take credit, someone's going to take your credit, right? And that could turn into complications that you could avoid. Take risk. There's going to be a lot of risk that you're going to do in this field. You took a risk being here in this program. That means you also take a stand, meaning that there's going to be, unfortunately, a lot of injustice that you'll see, unethical stuff, or some issues that you want to take a stand, and other people might look up to you to take that stand. Take a hand. You're going to need to ask for help. Like this profession, you cannot do things by yourself. I'm a solo librarian, but I always ask my colleagues all over the networks I have, whether they're at MIT or UT Austin, if they could explain to me the single sign-on issue or like this acquisitions workflow, because there's some things I don't know that they can better interpret for me. And I'm really grateful. And you should always be thinking about how to ask for help, right? Because this profession requires that communities of support. And finally, take a chair. Wherever table you're going at, open the door, bring a chair so others can also have a seat. Because there are a lot of people who have been historically left out in this profession, intentionally or unintentionally, and we want to do our best to rectify the situation so that others can have a seat in this table and have that conversation. Now, all of that, as I shared, means that all of you have something you could share with others as a mentor. You might not see it, but I see all of you here as mentors to each other and a lot to learn from each other. And so I end with this sort of Kermit meme. You're thinking, I don't know anything, that's why I'm in this program. But actually, you know a lot already. You've experienced a lot. You're going to continue learning more and share what you know and mentor others and uplift others anyway, because that's what we have to do. So I just want to thank you all for listening. And I know I'm a little over time, but happy to chat more afterwards.
Thanks, everyone, for coming today. I'm Ann Agee. I'm chair of the library faculty here at the SJSU King Library. And I'm going to be talking today about the BIPOC Become Librarians grant and the journey that got us here. So first, I'd like to introduce the team. Please wave as I say your names. Most of us are here today. So Mantra Roy, our principal investigator. Carla Alvarez from San Jose Public Library, you saw earlier. Jane Dodge from SJSU. Carly Lowe. Michelle Villagran, who just stepped away. Sylvia Ruiz, who couldn't be here today, and Carrie Wong. They're in the back. By the way, Carrie was a graduate student at the beginning of the program, and she is now an employee here at the library. Happy to have you, Carrie. And I also want to acknowledge some additional SJPL team members. Vijay Kalamba, who is the division manager, and Candace Tran, the branch manager. They stepped in when Carly moved on to become chief of staff. Thank you for doing that. So we also appreciated the support of San Jose State and the San Jose Public Library. Both institutions have strong equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts that made our goals easier to pursue, and we appreciate that a lot. So the original idea for BBL project came into being during the pandemic closure in 2020. At the library, we were discussing anti-racism and the need for open conversations in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder. In the course of the discussions, the very low representation of BIPOC colleagues emerged. More than 80% of librarians and archivists are white, which does not reflect the population of this country. Soon after, Monter drafted a short proposal about how we could invite BIPOC undergraduates to get a hands-on experience of the profession. She reasoned that unless BIPOC students know about the profession, they will never think of choosing librarianship as a career. She shared the proposal with me, and I encouraged her to develop the idea into a grant proposal for the IMLS. And I also want to recognize An Tran, who was our director of development at the time. Oh, she did. We recognize her anyway. And soon after, our team came together. While discussing the lack of diversity in our profession, the team reverse engineered the problem. Because many LIS careers require a graduate degree, we wondered how many undergraduates even knew that an MLIS was required for the job. So we decided to meet undergraduates from BIPOC backgrounds, learn about their perceptions about the profession, and share important aspects of the job with them. Then introduce them to mentorship and internship components. And I haven't been keeping up with my slides. So with the team assembled and the proposal complete, we applied for the Laura Bush 21st Century Program through the Institute of Museum and Library Science Services and received the grant in July 2022. So we had a lot of goals. Our main one was demystifying the career of librarianship, including archives for BIPOC students, so that we can inspire them to join the profession. Before beginning, we sought out advisors from the campus and the wider community and met with them twice. From them, we learned about how to share a realistic picture of the profession with students, and their inputs were very valuable to the project. After meeting with our advisory board, we created student focus groups to better understand their needs and the challenges they face. One thing we learned is that most students were often introduced to libraries by family members, and their reaction was happiness. One student said, "My first visit to the library was probably when I was about 5 years old in my hometown. I was very enamored when I first came in, like, wow, and I started to sing." We want all our patrons to do that. Students also let us know, there we go, that they knew very little about the profession, and without prompting, several brought up the need for a mentor to introduce themselves to the career. Other takeaways were that students felt that librarians work with the community at large, others that there were many roles involved in being a librarian, and they wondered what training was required. Barriers that came up frequently were the money and time involved in becoming qualified. However, there was also a lot of positivity about the potential within the role of librarian. I think librarianship as a career has a lot of room for creativity and improvement in different library systems, depending where you're working, which I think is something I look for in the job, is creativity and expression. In the mentorship component, we wanted to expose our students to a wide range of professionals in the field so that students realize the many career paths are available. We discussed the mentorship experience with our advisory board. They suggested we recruit colleagues who would be able to share the promises as well as the challenges of the job, and also offer an insider's view of leadership and technical roles. We shared a survey to gather interest from BIPOC professionals in the field. We used social media platforms and email listservs to spread the word. We had an overwhelming response. Over 100 potential mentors from all over the country, and at least one from British Columbia. A mentor candidate wrote, "I'm excited that a program like this exists. It's something that I needed as a student." Choosing the mentors was a very challenging process, but we were eventually able to choose 7 mentors for our mentees. As you can see, our mentors came from a variety of institutions and from across the United States. We did our best to match mentors to the students' areas of interest, academic, public, school, and medical libraries, as well as archives. We also wanted the mentors and mentees to have a shared learning experience around cultural competence and the mentor-mentee roles. For this, we engaged a trusted consultant to lead sessions for the mentees and the mentors, and then both groups together. To help the mentors in their meetings with the mentees, we created a BIPOC Become Librarians online guide that includes suggested discussion questions for each of their get-togethers. In this example, for the topic of instruction, the prompt for the mentees is, what type of people would you like to teach? Other topics include common librarian responsibilities, such as outreach, reference, and collection development. Some important additions we made were practical ways to pay for graduate school and what the application process for an MLIS looks like. Later in the year, we also surveyed our mentors about their experience. Overall, they found their mentees to be enthusiastic and their discussions were lively. As the quote above shows, the students were at different stages in their education and in thinking about their future careers. As one mentor shared, something that might benefit the mentorship experience is to have the students prepare resumes or do some career exploration as groups. I think a large portion of my conversations are very basic career counseling questions, so maybe even a bit of an introduction to this would be beneficial. Other challenges mentors faced were scheduling and communicating effectively, whether it was through Zoom, Discord, email, or text. The mentors met these challenges and they shared that the students were excited to learn how libraries are involved in so many different activities, such as outreach, programming, marketing, staff development, and more. Like the mentors, mentees received training. Then they met with their mentors 8 to 10 times over the academic year. In addition to meeting with their mentors, we offered the mentees a field trip to the UC Berkeley libraries so that they could meet and learn from other librarians active in the field. The students also had the option to work in libraries as interns for some hands-on experience. Several mentees were excited to take advantage of this opportunity, and these are some of the internships on offer and the skills they were introduced to. So we had several here on the university side at the King Library and on the public library side, as well as in our archives upstairs and outside the university at the network of the National Library of Medicine. Things mentees enjoyed about their mentorship was how we had matched them in their areas of interest and learning about the different experiences and events available in the public librarian's role. And as one mentee shared, if I have questions about being a librarian, I have a person who can truthfully answer those questions, which is what we wanted with our mentors. But they also had challenges looking to the future. Students foresaw challenges included getting practical experience in libraries and, of course, figuring out how to fund a graduate education. Just for fun, here are some photos from our Berkeley field trip. The Berkeley librarians were very generous with their time, and we were able to visit the Environmental Design Library, Ethnic Studies Library, and Bioscience Library, where we got to see some of the rare books from their archives, which is that last photo there on the left. So what comes next? It's been a quick 2 years. And this summer, we will be analyzing the feedback we've received from mentors and mentees so that we can create a toolkit of best practices. We plan on sharing this toolkit with other libraries interested in replicating the program. The team is also planning to publish and present about the BBL project to help boost its message across the country. In future years, we plan on applying for an IMLS implementation grant. Our original grant was called a planning grant. As part of this, we will bring in additional partners from across the country. We are also planning on a longitudinal component to see if students involved in the program do or don't go on to pursue a graduate degree in library science. And our mentors and mentees, you will be getting another feedback form to let us know more about your experience. So stay tuned for coming attractions. So that was a very quick overview of the program. I'm the only one standing between you and your lunch, but are there any questions about the program for me or for the team? Most of us are here. Yes.
Could you tell us more about the network that medical libraries are? I'm not remembering the name right.
Oh, the Network for the National Library of Medicine.
Yes.
It is, as you might think, supporting the National Library of Medicine. And what it is it's sort of its outreach arm. So it is talking to other medical libraries and librarians. And that's sort of, I guess, that's what you define it as? Yeah, outreach. Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned that some other libraries expressed interest in replicating this program. I was wondering if you had any more information about like where in the country or what other places this might be happening.
So we've had people calling to ask us about details. Did they speak to you, Carly?
I brought a Zoom recently, and I cannot what library. I was Dominion University, and so they got in touch with us to discuss this project further, and we have heard from some of our campuses who are interested in similar projects.
So for those on Zoom, that was Old Dominion University and some other campuses in the country.
Okay, so if you can wrap up your fabulous conversations, and those on Zoom, welcome back. We are now moving to the panel portion of our event today. And so this is like, I feel like it's The Price is Right. I need come down. I know Daisy is on Zoom. I see Daisy there. Daisy's one of our mentors. Also, I need Joanna. Okay, come on up. I guess up is the word this way. Another fabulous mentor. And then Gracia, one of our mentees. And then Hannah. And Carly. I need you too, Carly. Carly is with our BBL team, but also was involved with our hosting the internship. I think because I have a little cold, so I'm going to stay over here and I will prompt the questions. This is very informal. They've received a list of questions. And I'm just going to begin this part with saying, and this is for everyone actually in the room, but for our panelists, thinking about how do you begin to reflect on your mentoring journey, whether you are a mentor, a mentee, or even Carly in the role you played. So thinking about how do you begin to reflect on that? Certainly your journey is not over. This is the start, if not an ongoing journey. And according to Zachary, who's the author of The Mentor's Guide, Zachary says in the text, all mentoring relationships are embedded in context. Context influences how we perceive reality, what we see as possible and achievable. So question-wise, I'm going to start with the mentors. I'm going to do this kind of as a popcorn, and maybe we'll start with Daisy. Hi, Daisy. So my first question is for Daisy. What are the contexts that shape how you mentor? And a follow-up to that, how did a personal or professional mentoring experience shape your expectations or assumptions about mentoring within this project? Daisy?
Yeah, can folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you for the flexibility to do this over Zoom. I appreciate it very much. Hello, folks. My name is Daisy Muralles. I use she, her, a pronouns. And so to answer the question, really, throughout my life, I've had individuals that have stood out in many different ways. And sometimes it's not someone that I was expecting to be a mentor, but really someone that I needed at that time in my life. And so in the way that I've approached mentorship, really, it's like sometimes it's not so much of, who can I inspire, who can I be, but, you get selected to be in that role. And so allowing to be in conversation with someone, seeing where they're at and how our paths kind of cross, and so kind of the feeling of like how my past experiences with my mentors kind of inform the way that I've done my mentoring, and really it never comes the way that you expect. Really, like some folks are really great at being your mentors in your professional kind of sense of like, oh, they're a great editor, and the other ones, it's really your cheerleader who's trying to inspire you and guiding you in that way. It always looks a little different, but really, like how you mentioned in building context, it really does depend on where we're at in our lives. Yeah, and I don't want to take too much time, but a personal mentor of mine that recently, unfortunately, passed away was Edward Fields. He was, started off as my boss, but really, like, I really needed this person to kind of be in my back corner in the background, kind of being like, Daisy, hey, are you going to apply to grad school? Daisy, hey, did you already do that? It wasn't even somebody who was there all the time, but someone who always encouraged me. And I hope to do that. Like, that's, I think, how I've that experience and that kind of really shaped the way that I approach mentorship. And you said popcorning, and so I'll pass it over to the other mentor.
Yes, well, popcorn to Joanna, and I just want to highlight a few things you said. I think really the expectation, right? We might set out and have these expectations in our relationship we're developing, but there might be some derailment, right? Or things might happen, and so your conversations, your communication, it's just part of that mentorship relationship and how it develops, whether it's an organic one or if it's very structured or informal. And then also the fact that you had someone, that was there, was your champion for you. I'm hoping that all of our mentors throughout this process with our mentees will continue to be those champions and supporters of our mentees and follow you throughout your career, whether you decide to continue to pursue librarianship or go in into another field. So Joanna, same question. Context and how does that shape you? Context that shape how you mentor, and then about expectations or assumptions about mentorship in this project.
Oh, we have to turn. Green light. Where the green light is, of course. Hi, Joanna. She, her, Angel. The context. So, I'm Latina and in Latin America, the concept of mentoring is very foreign. So starting from that, when I started understanding what mentoring was actually my first work in libraries. I wasn't a librarian, but I was facilitating a literacy program for families that were mostly immigrant families, Spanish speaking, in the Bay Area, and I had to create mentoring situations. And in that process, I realized how many mentors had helped me through my life without me knowing. And in this program, I was really humbled to be selected to be a mentor. And Michelle, I have worked with Michelle in the past, and I just, you don't know how much you have to contribute until somebody tells you you have a lot to contribute. Many times, for people of color, it's foreign for us to brag about how cool we are. So in that context, I wanted to pay it forward, and I wanted to encourage my mentees to know what questions to ask and feel comfortable asking questions, even if they thought, I don't know what I'm asking, but I'm gonna try. And going that journey with them. And talking about mentors, So in my this is like my third, fourth career. I've been in architecture, psychology research, social services in nonprofits, and in law enforcement social services in criminal courts, and then librarianship. It wasn't until I was in librarianship that I felt, I kicked butt in all my jobs, okay? But in librarianship, I felt I had found my people. And it had a lot to do with people going out of their way to help me figure out my career path. And my mentor actually just over a year ago was applying for a job where I work, for a very high leadership role. And she asked me for advice and guidance. And I was like, what? And that made a full circle for me. I'm like, maybe I could be a really good mentor if I tried.
Thank you, Joanna. I think too with mentorship, it's a process, right? There's texts out there and whatnot that we can read about, but it is a process and learning how to go through like the worst steps to be a really good mentor, and then how to pivot if you need to. I just went through it was through the CSU AIM, which is Advancing Inclusive Mentorship. It's a program for, I don't know, but now I can train you all, because now I'm a trained person, train the trainer. But it's really around inclusive mentorship and understanding like processes and a lot of aspects that both mentees go through as well as mentors. So let's popcorn it to the mentees now. So let's start with Gracia. Describe your mentorship experience in a few sentences and what really stood out to you. What maybe words or phrases based upon going through this project really stood out in your mentorship experience?
Hello. Okay. If I had to describe my internship in a couple of sentences, I'd say that I received the guidance that I was looking for, even though I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Because going into this program, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to look for. I had just seen the email that was being sent out to all the students, and my sister had told me, "Oh, like go apply, like you really like interested in the library," as I had like previously been a volunteer at my public library, and she's like, "Yeah, you go, just try it out." And I was like, I don't really know, like I don't really know if this is something like I want to do, but I did it anyways, and then I got into the program. And my first meeting with my mentor, Tracy, she asked me, "What do you want to get out of this mentorship?" And in my head, I was like, I don't know, like, oh, I had no idea what I wanted to get out, what could come out of this, but I just decided I want to try maybe like getting a mentorship or an internship inside any sort of industry that works parallel to the library, as right now my dream goal is to work in the marketing industry for the publishing industry. And I wanted to see if this program could help me find a way to connect those two together. So overall, I did end up receiving an internship here at SJPO. And so I would say I have achieved what I wanted to get out of this program.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And Hannah, how about you? Words or phrases stuck out in your mentoring experience in a few sentences?
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay. So one of the things I've got out of this internship was there's a lot of learning that goes along the way. So I did talk with some people earlier, and I was telling them essentially how even if you're coming in, you're not going to know everything. And so it very much the librarianship offers that learning process, and you actually can find it fun through that. And another one is like similar to that is like how it's not when we're learning something new, it's not like it's something foreign per se, but it's something that we might have had knowledge of before, but something that could be expanded on as you're learning new knowledge. And so it's not like you don't know anything. It's just everything is kind of interlinked. And so I think you find that out through the process of librarianship. So I thought that was really cool.
I love that interlinked. And I think that's true. Just the connections, even from Ray's keynote, you could see the connections that were developed and the interlinking, even with differing groups and even different experiences along the way. Well described. And then also, it's okay if you don't know. I think even mentors, and even once we're out in the professional world, sometimes we don't know. And that's when it's the hand, right? Ask for help, or that hand, or even extend your hand to help someone else if maybe they may look like they don't know and you want to help support them. Carly, I'm going to go off script here because I want to pull in what Garcia said regarding internships. So can you talk about your experiences, especially with this program, with coordinating and setting up the internships, and what your takeaway was what you took away from the internships and what you observed from the mentees' experiences?
Sure.
Thank you.
Archivist here. I was a few things, but I was on the BIPOC Become Librarians team, and then I also ended up hosting an internship through the university archives. And I wanted to talk about, I'm sorry, what else?
Talk about your observations of what you saw through the mentee experience, and also your own takeaway from the experience.
I'm very enthusiastic about the idea of making sure every student in the program had an internship. That was an assumption on our part that every student or program would want an internship. That would work on the reality of all of our students' daily lives and needs, and so actually through the advocacy of our mentors, we came to understand that that wasn't actually a realistic goal for so I'm trying to really learn what kind of experience would work for different students. Do my best to kind of pair experiences with the students who needed them, because or wanted them, because the goal is that in addition to the mentorship, that students kind of got someone on the ground behind the scenes. And what is it actually like to really do this work on a Tuesday? It's like Tuesday at 2 p.m. when you're a librarian, right? So that was really interesting, just adjustment for us and learning about the diversity of the diverse group of mentees. And then because in particular had particular internship needs, that matched something that we actually needed done in all of that. I was able to design an internship experience for that particular student, and it was awesome. Like, he that he was coming in to, with his study, with his interests, with just his particular way of working, and that being a perfect match for what needed to be done. And I was looking in, making sure that he's still feeling like I can actually learn from the school to do, because I don't want to just be, getting your wonderful talents and everything. And so, he's learning and I'm learning from working with him. This pretty major learning about the guys is getting taken care of. So I'm being very symbiotic, and I'm really grateful for how it worked.
Does anyone else, Daisy or anyone else, want to comment about kind of internships, especially if you yourself went through an internship, or any aspects that you wish to share with our mentees and mentors? That was off script also. Okay, well, I will say I did not do an internship in my whole educational career ever, and I wish I had. I think now advising students, I'm always encouraging them, if they have the opportunity or chance to take on an internship, because then you're exposed to and learning so much more. You may not have that opportunity if you continue in one job, and maybe you'll have to pivot or want to pivot. You'll find something you really love and want to pivot to it. Joanna?
All right, so the reality of internships is, are they paid? Do I get credit? And that was my situation. I went to school full time and worked full time in the cohort. And so it wasn't easy, and I had to move 7 times in 6 years. So yeah, after moving to this country. So yeah, the reality of an unpaid internship was not happening. So I did do an internship in my undergrad with when I transferred from City College of San Francisco. I moved to San Francisco State, and my undergrad was in psychology then. And I learned that they were paying people as an internship and getting credit in a class that I needed to take. So I did that, and I was tutoring kids in 3rd grade with reading, getting to the level they needed to be in 3rd grade because they were falling behind. And now look at where we are right now. The need is so high. But if it wasn't for the grades and being paid, I would not have been able to do that. And I see more and more of that reality being part of the design of programs like this one. And I think that's a big part of why it's successful, because it's taking the reality of the needs of a lot of BIPOC people into consideration. Instead of saying, well, it's always like this is how internships work, is no. It's always like this, and you don't have us around. There's a reason. So addressing the reasons in a very tangible and real way is one of the reasons programs like this are successful in my view. I think that when you get testimony, that needs to go somewhere and marketing later on. I think that was the impetus behind the internships and our thinking of our program. So John, I appreciate that. All right, so let's go to, I'm going to go back to the mentors. And Daisy, so this question actually ties coincidentally to something you spoke to, Ray, about with your 6 questions. And the first question you had stated was, how much of your identity can you keep? And so I actually posed this question to the mentors. Prior to accepting a mentee through our program, how did you prepare to understand different aspects of your mentee's identity? So already understanding and knowing your own identity, but how did you prepare yourself in working with your mentee and understanding their identity? Daisy?
Sure. And earlier, I know you had made a call for like if I had participated in an internship, and I did. I was a ALA 2018-2019 Spectrum Scholar, and that was an amazing program where really that was the only way that I would feel like I even belonged in the profession. And so that was just a note that I wanted to make sure got shared. And I'm hoping that everyone heard about the ALA Spectrum Scholarship. It will help pay for your master's. And so you haven't done so, please explore that. But to answer the current question, you know, of course, the program provided some notes about who our mentees were going to be. And I attended the introductory sessions, but one of the first things that I did was share like a questionnaire to our students as well to figure out, to the mentees, to figure out like, you know, what is this, the thing that keeps us going, right? Like what is motivating us? How do we even try to articulate some of those pieces? Because whether it's, you know, I really want to be able to get a job after I graduate and have you know, something like the next step visible. A lot of that comes down to like, okay, well, what's moving you, right? Like, how do you want to move through this? What can we use as that fuel that moves you through some difficult times, sometimes, especially those transition periods? One of my mentees was graduating. And so, you know, what we really ended up working on was trying to figure out what can keep us going to that next step to make sure that gap didn't feel so big and so long, especially when we are still questioning and thinking about, you know, what do I even want to do next? And so some of the questions that I asked to try to gather some of this, I don't want to call it encouragement, but in many ways, you know, like how do we identify the things that you need to either translate what you are walking with to that next step? And so, you know, asking very direct questions about what are some of the skills that you are feeling really proud about, some accomplishments or experiences that you already achieved. And that kind of takes a few moments to kind of pull from people, because of like many, I think Joanna, you mentioned it earlier that, we don't want to brag about ourselves. That's hard. It's like, and sometimes in these professions, we kind of have to really be our own advocates. And so sharing some of that language of like, okay, let's talk about those skills, that experience, that expertise that you probably already carry. So let's name it that and let's call it out. And so that took, like, I think some of our first sessions to really understand how I can fit into that puzzle of what type of support they needed. I think we spent a good chunk thinking about all right, let's look at our resumes, let's look at our letters, let's look at what we are working with, our tools that exist, and like let's think back and just reflect on the classes that we've taken and all that, intermingled with the conversation about what librarianship looks like. And so just kind of crosswalking that. And so I hope that answered the questions. Like I of course wanted to know who the students were and their identities and what they brought forward. But I think like, especially for the part of like, okay, we have limited time and space. How do we use what drives us, what really motivates us to that next step was my goal. Because that's how I felt like I could be most useful in learning how to help the students that I was paired up with.
Well, and I think Daisy, I think that ties to, again, what Ray in his keynote pointed out too, about the motivation, like what drives you? Even if it's an interest, something that might not relate to librarianship at all, but what drives you? What do you care about? What are you passionate about? And maybe it's, I don't know, wine. We could be a wine librarian. Okay. I'm just saying. But there's like tying in what your interests are and your passion. And then I'm glad you pointed out the ALA Spectrum Scholarship. So if many of you haven't heard ALA.org or talk to Ray Pun, the next president of ALA, you'd be surprised how many people do not apply, and there's money that just sits. And there's a lot of money through associations like Reforma and other various associations to help support you to get your degree. I'm going to go to the mentees because in Mantra, is it okay if I go like 5 minutes over, even though I have to go across the street for my next panel? But okay. So I want to ask the mentees, kind of building on this identity conversation, what similarities or differences did you have with your mentor, and how have these supported you in the development of that relationship throughout the time in this program? So whomever wants to go first.
Yeah, so I had a couple differences with my mentor as I got an internship program of being in the social work in the library here at SJPL. And I had learned about that opportunity through my mentor. And then we had a meeting later where I asked her to help me prepare for the upcoming interview. And she was telling me how she had never had the opportunity to work in that specific section of the library where you're doing social work, where you're helping underprivileged community. And so she had a very different ideas of what like maybe the questions would be for the interview. And obviously I had no idea at all like going into it, but Tracy she very helped me. She helped me out a lot with the interview. She gave the knowledge that she did have, she helped me with. She told me what are the typical questions for like an interview in the library would be. She had sent me questions that she was gonna ask for an upcoming interview that she was gonna do. And so that kind of difference, while it wasn't what I was expecting, it was a good difference as she had a previous experience, but not experience in the section that I wanted. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's a great example. I mean, we don't all know everything, right? So, but I'm glad that your mentor was able to guide you and support you in, the foundational pieces, I guess we would say. And that's where too, like leveraging the connections and networks we have. So maybe then your mentor could have called a friend who maybe had that expertise, and if there was more time, I know there's time constraints. Hannah?
We actually had the same mentor.
Oh,
Yeah, so this was kind of funny. But I was just looking at how we interacted in general. one of the things I noticed very quickly was how extroverted she was. And I just sat there like, oh, wow. But I think like her enthusiasm and her passion for as a librarian and where she is, like, I think that just kind of like inspired me to be like, wow, like there is like so much potential in that. I think one of the things that really stood out to me was that she was hosting like she hosts like a genealogy kind of program in her library. And I was just like very thoroughly impressed because I was just like, what? Like you can do that essentially? Like you can have those kind of programs where you kind of at least for her program, she was talking about how she kind of helps get the DNA from like participants and then they kind of trace back their ancestry. And I was just so interested in that. I was just like, wow, like the library can just offer so much programs and you can also implement your own if you're outspoken about it, of course. And I think that was something, even though it was like something so different, like her outspokenness and everything, I just think that kind of made me kind of a little bit more confident and a bit more awe-inspired by just what can be done in the library.
Thank you for that. In the interest of time, we're not going to go through all of the rest of the questions, the long list I gave you. But I'm going to start, we'll start with Carly and we'll come down and end with Daisy over here. And my question to you is, what is one takeaway you would want, so one piece of advice or one takeaway from this whole program experience, whether you were on the BBL team, a mentee, or a mentor, one takeaway you would want to share? And specifically, if this were to happen again, say here or at another institution, someone replicates it, what's one takeaway or piece of advice you would give? Should I come back to you, Carly? Is anyone ready? I know it was not off script. Okay, Joanna.
Take risks. By what I mean by that is be okay being yourself. And if librarianship is not your career, make sure that whatever path you take, you look for the people that could guide you and ask them to be your mentor informally. You don't have to say, do you want to be my mentor? But you can have conversations with people in your chosen field and learn from them. We all have something to give, and we all always are learning. I would say I advocate for librarianship because after so many careers that I've had, in librarianship, you can be 100% yourself. Not every library system is that great, but where I work and where I've worked is amazing. And advocate for yourself. That is major. Seek guidance, advocate for yourself, take risks. I know it was one, but you know.
It was one extended. They all have branches. Okay, Carly's ready.
Thank you, because that reminded me. I knew I had something on my mind earlier, but I couldn't quite recall it. Believe people, with discretion, but generally believe people who say they're willing to help you and take them up on it. I was recently talking to a student who was being offered some help from a family member and was reluctant to take it. And I was saying, take it. And she's like, oh, and I feel so bad. They're always helping me. One day you're going to be in the position to do the same for someone else. And you're, whether it's monetary or time or energy or advice, whatever it is, and you're going to know the joy of being able to support someone. I've been supported so much to get where I am, and I still don't have a lot I feel like I can offer the people who supported me, but there's a lot I can offer the people who are coming up after me, and it feels good. And so people say they want to help you, support you, believe them and take them up on it, and then be ready to pass it on. And then a practical note, I'm sorry to San Jose State, but University of Illinois iSchool offers full tuition remission to Spectrum scholars. So if you do get that scholarship, apply to University of Illinois. Okay.
I will pass that on. Hannah, or actually let's go Daisy.
Okay, yeah. I wrote a few things for this, like just thinking about flexibility and being prepared to kind of in those moments that kind of feel like, oh, I got lucky. But no, if you show up prepared, then those moments that feel like, oh, this was just like a slim chance that I did this, like you're prepared. And so I forget the saying, I didn't write that down, but I think showing up, being prepared goes a long way. I did want to say I wish the mentees, everyone who participated in this program, like, good luck and I wish you great success in everything that you do. And like, really, we're in libraries, and libraries are such a amazing place to really ask questions and explore. And I am so proud to be part of that profession that allows for the distribution of open knowledge and information. And really, like in this world that forever feels like, hopefully not forever, I would need to remove that word out of my mouth. There's so many barriers in this world, capitalistic barriers, and like white supremacy is among us and all this stuff. We really need to support each other in the communities that we serve. And that starts with advocating for ourselves. And, right now in this time of genocide that's happening in Gaza, we really, really want to support free speech and this open environment in libraries. And as librarians, as a librarian, I get to do that. And I wish everyone the joy of education and that pursuit of knowledge. And so really be prepared and like push forward with that passion that you have in knowledge seeking, and let's do it.
Thank you, Daisy. And what about for our mentees? Any final takeaway you want to share?
I would say be open to anything. And yeah, I feel like a lot of opportunities arise for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't take advantage of them. Like this, I was not going to take advantage of it because I was like, oh, I'm probably not going to get in. I don't know what it's going to do. But I put the work in, I got in, and I got so many things out of it. So please, please take advantage of the things that are offered to you. I think the panel has mostly said what I wanted to say. But I think through it all, I've said this throughout essentially. I think there's just a lot of learning you can get from it, and your learning is like it will take you anywhere. Like I think as long as you keep your mind open to learning, the experience will always be like endless. And I think that is something that I learned from here.
That's great. Thank you. Can we give our mentors and mentees a round of applause? I think I'm going to turn over to Mantra, and I do have to run across the hall to another panel I'm on. So thank you. It's good to see you.
I'm shouting a shout out to my mentees. Woohoo!
Well, thank you, everyone. This panel was really what we were hoping it would be, great conversation among everyone. So, and thanks to all of you for making this day very special. Before we hand out our certificates to our deserving students, I would like to thank some people. So first of all, the students, all of you mentees who have taken the leap to learn about the LIS profession. We hope that many of you will come back to this profession. Now you know a bunch of librarians, so you know who to talk to when you're ready for the LIS program and the profession. Our mentors, each one of you, for working with your mentees, across time zones. Few of you are in California, many of you are in other states, so thank you very much for that. Our advisory board for sharing their valuable experience of the profession with us. Ann Lai, who I was hoping would come back, but she was our director of development when we started with the grant proposal development and then helping us navigate the application process. we had Min Nok Vu from the SJSU Research Foundation for helping us navigate grant-related paperwork, and it's a lot of paperwork, and she was really good at helping us through with this. The library marketing team for doing their magic in coordinating all aspects of this event and branding of the program. The media services team here, without whom we couldn't have done all of this, for making this event run smoothly. They always get it right, always. So thank you for doing it. Virginia Wright, our current director of development, for looking into essential details. She's great too. Our Dean Mike Meth, of course, who always encourages and supports new projects. We have been very fortunate to have Ray Pun with us, like at the helm of the profession, and spending this day with us today. Thank you. And finally, I think the team, the BIPOC Become Librarians team, all of us here has worked through every single step of not just this 2-year journey, but through the grant proposal process as well, which was like 1.5 years preceding the actual receipt of the grant. And we have always worked together, one member stepping in when another has to step back for a bit. And I want to give a special shout out to Jane Dodge, who almost single-handedly organized today's event. Like really, she did it all by herself. So thank you, Jane. And it's a personal privilege for me to be able to work with this team. I meet them every day of my work here, but these 2 years and the preparing of the grant, thank you. Thank you very much for doing this work with us. So it's time for the actual thing, the certificates. And to all of you, very, very deserving students. So I'll be calling out the names, and Carly and Jane will be handing out the certificates. So first comes Carmina Victoria Bosmanier. Yes, come over. Thank you.
Come up, stay up your feet and do a group shot.
Yes. Next, we have Chao Li. We are pausing for photos. Okay, next is Gracia Diaz. Okay, next is Gwen Pham. Yes. Okay, next we have Hannah Long. Okay, next we have Envy Noriega. Hey, Seiji Kawamura. Yay, Seiji. Great. Then we have Kimberly and Rodebush. Okay, next we have Maria Antoinette Plurad. Okay, Tammy Cow. Okay, we have Grace Pang. And I want to also acknowledge Herman Lai, one of our mentees who is online. He couldn't be here, so good job, Herman. Okay. Yes, group photo now. Okay, thank you, everyone.